Hi, good morning or good afternoon. My name is Frank Nolasco. Today I'm going to be talking about my final project, my study design for the course here within the program. So, a brief agenda here. I'm going to talk to you about the problem of practice, the purpose of the study, the significance of the study, my positionality within this research, brief review of the literature, and then kind of a conclusion to wrap things up. So first, let's talk about this problem of practice. The problem of practice I'm examining relates to the barriers that Latino students face when entering college and how we as educational leaders can tear down these barriers. And one of the specific things I like to look at is creating equitable and inclusive curriculum for Latino students. So there's a lot of different barriers that happen here. Um, I guess my personal and professional experience have come into play with this a little bit. I've been working in higher education for almost a decade. I've had a couple different positions. Started off as an academic advisor, worked as a retention specialist. I've been an adjunct success coordinator, and currently I'm associate director for student success at a state university. So I've personally witnessed the struggles of these Latino students on our campus, watching them struggle to navigate these waters of education, and really trying to help those students find a sense of community, find a sense of belonging within that. And these students need an advocate for that. So the purpose of this study. So the purpose of the study is, with my current position, I'm responsible for basically the creation and development and assessment of our first year student first year course at a state university. And so, having seen these students struggle, I was wondering, is there something that I can do? I need to understand these barriers, and then I can maybe kind of adjust the curriculum building aspect of my job and kind of change my philosophy to kind of help break down those barriers. So some questions I was thinking about, were, what specific barriers do exist for Latino students in higher education, right? What are their needs that they want, right? How can I develop some sort of equitable curriculum to combat these barriers? What should be included in these changes, right? So I'm really looking to propose some sort of social change in my own philosophy, in my own way of thinking, to help break down these barriers for Latina students. The significance of the study. Well, obviously, I want to understand what these barriers are, right? That can only help me in my career and help students, especially Latino students, as I would be an advocate for them, helping them persist to graduation and continue on in higher education. So, what I'm really kind of thinking about is, excuse me, sorry, kind of looking at having students have a voice in the room, being able to talk about their own history, their own culture, their own experiences in the classroom, right? We want to make sure that they have that sense of community and belonging to their education and to their campus. I also want to misplace any kind of misconceptions or stereotypes that we as educators may have against this marginalized group of people, right? And really just kind of open up this discussion, right? Have this in-depth analysis of how maybe I can change a first year experience course to help these students face these barriers. And really, I'm looking for transformational change. It's not, I don't think it's just enough. Well, maybe just to tweak something, or maybe just to change something. What kind of real transformational change can I make to address equity in culture and personal experiences within our students' bodies? So the positionality. So my background in higher education, I kind of talked about it a little bit. I've been in higher ed at a couple different places for almost 10 years now. I've had administrative roles, some faculty roles, and during my time, I've actually witnessed, Latino students struggle, having issues. Right, I've seen them have that lack of belonging. I've seen students, really have struggle with that. Funds of knowledge is one really interesting term that's come up a lot, really. So this funds of knowledge refers to the knowledge, the experiences, the academic background gained by a particular culture, and that enables them to navigate social contexts, really. So the Latino students really struggle with this funds of knowledge in higher education, right? And I've brought my own positionality, my own connection to this, right? I've seen students be ignored or have little help from administrators in higher education. I've seen students basically just try to take courses together so they have somebody there to lean on, somebody who can share their language and culture. And I've seen students, having to work full-time jobs and they're late for class because they have responsibilities to their family. So I've witnessed this frustration as someone who is identifying as a Mexican American or Latino. I've experienced some of these as well personally. So it's really hard for me to not have personal stake in this game, but I do have that personal connection to the problem of practice. But I'm really hoping that with my own research biases and guidance from my advisors, from my peers, from the help of others, to really make sure that I look through an impartial and objective lens through this study. So let's go over the literature review here. There's a bunch of stuff on here. I think I may have gone a little overboard on the paper, but it was something I've been kind of working on for a couple months here, so I was kind of interested in this. So Gonzalez really talks about relational, individual, and systematic barriers that Latinos face, right? So when we're talking about these types of things, relational barriers, these are things that students may not have anyone to help them through this college process, right? They're on their own, they don't have anybody, so there's no relationships there. So there's this relational barrier. There's also this issue of individual barriers, right? Is that their ability, their drive, their confidence, their own sense of self, right? So that's kind of an individual barrier. And then there's systematic barriers. These are policies, resources, structures that really kind of get in the way. When we're talking about institutional barriers, these are things like, okay, we have things that are predominantly white, predominantly white teachers and white educators in the American education system, right? So they might not have that same experience as a Latino student does, right? So they might have some stereotypical views about Latinos. They might not understand, their culture and their history. So that can have a problem. Really just understanding their values, their beliefs, and their identity, really, with that. So, other teachers, as when we're talking about institutional barriers, really come in at a disadvantage as well, right? A lot of times they just don't have those resources to help all the students that they want to do. There are government barriers as well, right? So there's things, if we looked at the last 2020 census, Latinos are the fastest growing population in the United States, right? I think we kind of all have seen those stats. So unfortunately, there has been a lot of anti-immigration and anti-immigrant policies and laws that have gone into place that have hindered things, right? So we're looking at, like, in the turn of the century, Proposition 227 in California made a law that English had to be the primary language spoken in California. This is tough for teachers and students. What if I do speak Spanish? Am I going to lose my job? Is this going to be a big thing, right? 2001, South Carolina had a Senate Bill 20. That's kind of like that idea where you're allowed to stop and ask someone for their identification, without any warrant, without any kind of probable cause. Arizona did something similar in 2010 with their Senate Bill 1070. So there have been a bunch of different laws. I can go on and on and on and on and on, but those are just a couple ones. Rebellion was also another big issue, right? So there's this thing where students, especially students who are required to learn a new language, can often resist education, right? They might feel disrespected that their language, their identity, their culture is being erased by some sort of authoritarian institution, right? So there's that rebellion that takes place, right? They have little in common with their peers, their white peers, I guess I should say, or their teachers, and identify more with their community and their family outside of the classroom than they really do within the classroom, right? They see this structure that's destroying their culture and their community, right? So really it's up to us as education leaders to understand the difference between somebody who's not learning and failing out and this sort of symbolic violence or a performance strike, as it's been known to be called, right? That's not the same thing as the inability to learn, right? So it's really a rejection of pedagogy and teachers in an educational institution. So that's part of rebellion. Identity, kind of goes along with that a little bit. Students are really having a hard time, Latino students, I should say, in the classroom because, they're finding more of that support in their community, in their Spanish speaking community, whether it's, hanging out with their friends or, religious, going to Catholic church, things like that. Showing that pride and that heritage in their culture is important, right? These local family worlds, as Hemmings kind of talked about, their education, their citizenship, their life, they're learning through all of that social capital through their family, right? So that's important. The parents' roles plays a big role as well. So there is a cultural difference with Latino students. Really, and Latino parents, I should say, really expect the educational process to happen within the school walls, right? And so that's just a difference of culture. That's Latino parents saying, well, our job is to support our kids and our family. Your job is to educate them, right? So sometimes if Latino parents maybe aren't as maybe involved with bake sales or fundraising or all these other things that maybe white families are involved with, they can say, well, these parents are lazy or these parents don't care. No, they just have a different view of what this process is. And a lot of these parents aren't as educated, right? And so they don't even really understand how this process works in this country or with our culture of white America. So that's an issue for the parents as well. And then there's the intersectionality. So that's kind of examining all the different things mushed together, right? So we have things like, you're often they're first generation students. They are low income students. So you add all of these things kind of together, and it really makes it difficult for students, whether you're coming from low income, so you're forced to work a job to help pay the rent or the mortgage for your family. It's hard if you're coming from somewhere and you're the first generation, you have no idea what this is, and you've never been around higher education, so it's hard for you, right? So you don't know how financial aid works, you don't know how to navigate any of those waters. So that's kind of a brief review of the literature review. So why do we need to study? Kind of a little wrap up conclusion here. Why do we need this? So, to me at least, there's not much doubt Latino students face a multitude of barriers in higher education, right? So there is some research, obviously, about the barriers that they face in higher ed, but there really is kind of something missing talking about, okay, now we know these barriers. How does curriculum specifically going to be able to help them persist to graduation with retention rates and get through this? So that's kind of something I'm interested in, really, to kind of look at that, and specifically with my experience as a first year experience kind of course director for a university, kind of looking at how I can help with that to kind of head on these barriers and kind of break those things down, right? So possible solutions, including equitable and inclusive experience in curriculum. So that is it in a nutshell. I want to thank anybody who took the time to listen to this. I can't wait to see everybody else's. I'm really excited to see this. So this is a pretty good experience for me. I hope everybody else enjoyed their project design as well. I think it was a really cool first step into kind of going down this process. Thank you.